Okay, well, that was pretty good. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today's Project Delivery Knowledge Committee Symposium 2020, Delivering the Future, Pursuit of Excellence in Design and Construction, Delivering the Future. This is for 2 AIA learning units, and this is information I need to read off as for AIA Continuing Education. You can see our provider number is listed, plus the program number. And right now I'll say, and I'll say it again in a while, please attendees, keep yourself muted. It'll make it much easier. There's quite a few of you on this Zoom call today, and it just keeps the noise down. Lets the panelists continue. The next thing I would like to do is we had some very gracious sponsors that helped us out. AIASC, Gensler, Morley Builders, Murtaugh Treglia Stern and Daly LLP, and Solitude. Thank you so much for your support. This is a really great thing to help out the chapter. We really appreciate it. And the next thing that I need to read off before I turn this over to Ernest is this panel discussion on project delivery is designed to educate attendees about essential components of current trends in the pursuit of excellence in design and construction as united goal and mission of the AEC professions. The learning objectives, which I'm also required, but I need to move the chat line. Attendees will learn about the architect's role as specialist within the project delivery team. Attendees will learn how about the impact of current construction technology, law, and regulations on project delivery methods. Attendees will learn how current commercial project delivery methodology impacts development of construction documents and construction project management for life safety systems. Attendees will learn how to manage project scope, design, and construction within current project delivery technology and methods. We do ask you, rather than come up to ask questions at the end of this discussion, please do use the chat line. Ernest will be reading the questions off during that, somewhere around 6 o'clock or so. And then also at the conclusion, so that we can get your AI learning units recorded, please email Marilee Edgar. It's there at the base of this slide. You may want to take a photo of it and make sure you include your name and your AIA member number. So Ernest, at this point, I'd like to turn it over to you to start the panel discussion.
Great, Jeff. Thank you. And good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm Ernest Stewart, architect, chairman of the American Institute of Architects, Orange County, Project Delivery Knowledge Committee, and your moderator for the evening. Thank you, Jeff, for your acknowledgement of our valued sponsors for this evening's event and for the outstanding support of the AIAOC's staff members for this evening presentation. And special welcome to the National American Institute of Architects Project Delivery Knowledge Committee, whose members are attending this symposium. As founder and chairman of the AIAOC Project Delivery Knowledge Committee, I'm chosen to be the moderator for this event this evening. I acknowledge Kimberly Stewart, architect, AIA, for her participation in development of the content for this event, along with Ron Everly, architect, AIA, co-moderator, who was moderator for the 2019 symposium, as well as other members of the AIAOC Project Delivery Committee who have contributed greatly to the success of this event and are part of this audience. So thank you all. I'd like to run through the order of this evening, introduce each of the illustrious panelists, and then allow each to provide a brief introduction. After the panelists' introductions, I'll offer a starting question to each of the panelists and allow them to respond, as well as inviting discussion of the topic of the question among the panelists. We'll use a fair amount of time with this because we feel it will be valuable and educational throughout the discussion. Following the introductory questions, I'll ask a selection of additional seed questions directed to the panelists to respond to kick off the open discussion, allowing a few minutes for each question to have a general review and response. We'll give about 20 minutes to this part of the interactive discussion. I'll open the dialogue to questions from the audience via chat for interaction among the panelists. We'll focus about 15 to 20 minutes for this segment of the program. Then we will offer closing remarks. We've received approval to extend the Zoom meeting past 6:30, as Jeff just mentioned, to allow for additional questions and discussion. By way of introduction, I am an architect. I'm licensed in California and Arizona, and a longstanding member of AIAOC and a lead accredited professional. As CFO of Stewart Architecture, I represent our architectural consulting firm specializing in strategic project delivery methods with emphasis on constructability analysis. As director for special projects providing strategic consulting services, we embrace exemplary building performance. My professional focus is on the many aspects of project delivery, including management of integrated multidisciplinary documentation and modeling. Members of the Project Delivery Committee are very passionate about the topic for this symposium, Pursuit of Excellence in Design and Construction, and present the following key aspects of excellence. Acquisition of a large knowledge base in the area of expertise. So each architect, each engineer, each contractor has a huge knowledge base in their area of expertise. Number two is a commitment to continually improve and persevere. So in pursuit of excellence, each member of this panel is a provides deliberate and dedicated practice that is focused on concentrated attention to right action. So these are the attributes upon which we base the selection of our panelists. Now it's time for you to meet our panel. You can follow them from the PowerPoint provided to the attendees on the AIAOC website. So we'll begin this evening with Brian Pratt, who is an architect and UCI campus architect and the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Design and Construction. Our neighbor here on the University of California, Irvine campus, right down the street. The architect represented this evening is Nicholas Acevedo, AIA, Senior Associate and Technical Director and Studio Director with Gensler in Newport Beach. General contractors are represented by two contractors, including Vitas Rugenius, Operation Manager with Hensel Phelps, with Hensel Phelps Construction, and Samir Barbude, Senior Project Manager with Morley Builders Benchmark Contractors Incorporated. Our attorney this evening is Lawrence Treglia, partner with Murtaugh, Treglia, Stern and Daly, LLP, right here in Newport Beach and Irvine. Engineers represented by Dr. Sam Noor, principal with Absolute Consulting Engineers, who represent mechanical, plumbing, and electrical engineering. Our technology representative is Troy Gates, Solutions and Technology Consultant with USCAD. And AIACC architect and AIA member Stephen Hall is the VP, Vice President of Professional Practice with AIA California AIACA. We have a number of questions, and we wanted to start with Brian this evening. Brian, please, we have 3 minutes now for you to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background of experience and relationship to this panel and to the theme, Pursuit of Excellence in Design and Construction. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Ernest. I'm Brian Pratt. As Ernest mentioned, I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Design and Construction Services and the Campus Architect at University of California, Irvine. I'm a Design Build Institute of America accredited professional, practicing architect, and lead accredited professional. Former AIA Orange County past president, and also spent most of my career, I've been at UCI for about 6.5 years. So I spent most of my career working in private practice for firms of really all sizes, starting from 3-person firm on up to AECOM, about 100,000 person firm covering all disciplines. I was gravitated to the position at UCI because I did a great deal of higher education work and really fell in love with the sort of noble cause that higher ed really contributes to the mission and the memories of students, faculty, and staff on campuses. We have a tremendous amount of work coming up at UCI. Some of you may know we deliver many of our projects as design build. So that's somewhat unique in the UC system. And we have approximately $2 billion worth of work coming up in the next couple of years. So a great deal of work coming up. So happy to be here. Thanks, Ernest.
Brian, thanks very much for that introduction. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your participation this evening in this panel. Very powerful. So the next panelist is Larry Treglia, and his message comes from the attorney in the law point of reference. Please, Larry, introduce yourself to the audience and the panelists.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As Ernest mentioned, my name is Larry Treglia. I'm a senior partner, which is to say I'm old, at Murtaugh, Treglia, Stern and Diley. I've been representing the A&E community for now just over 34 years. Our firm's clients range from sole practitioners to some of the largest design firms in the world. And the projects that I've been involved in range from home remodels gone wrong to large school and hospital projects. My firm provides a broad range of legal services to our professional clients. We get involved in business formation, everything from business formation to ownership transitions, contract creations to contract reviews, employment issues. But for me, my practice is spent at least 90% of my day relates to litigation. And I've been involved in litigation, both state and federal court, as well as arbitrations with the American Arbitration Association, JAMS, and other organizations. I did some math. In the last 5 years, I've spent almost a year and a half, almost 18 months, engaged in either trials or binding arbitrations, defending the design community. I've had the pleasure of conducting several OCAIA seminars, including one that focuses on standard of care and liability avoidance issues. And I'll make a shameless plug for litigation-wise project management seminar that our firm's put on for the AIA for some years. I'm also a member of the ACEC Business Management and Insurance Committee, where I serve with some of the leaders in both the legal, design, and construction industry, trying to help evolve the standard of care. Lastly, I just want to thank Ernest and all the panelists for their commitment to raising the quality of practice for the design committee and for striving for excellence. I am truly hopeful that in time, these advancements will put me out of business, but it hasn't done so yet.
Well, Larry, thank you. And we have some ideas of how your participation in the process of project delivery, specifically at the facilitation meetings and cohabitation activities of projects in their delivery process can increase and amplify your influence in the design and construction process. So thank you. Our next panelist is Nicholas Acevedo, who is the architect, representing the architect's role and represents Gensler as a senior associate and technical director and studio director with a very large international firm, Gensler Newport Beach. Nick, please.
Well, thank you, Ernst.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you also. I want to say, really starting off, guys, to all the panelists, thank you for tonight. I think this is going to be really great. My kind of background, I've been lucky enough to be with Gensler for the last 14 years, doing a wide spectrum of work, spanning from large airports and transportation facilities, both local and abroad, as far as Korea and Auckland. And then I've also had a lot of opportunities locally here to do commercial business developments, commercial office facilities, retail facilities, as well as recently a large portion of education work. So it's been a really great opportunity over the last 14 years and a wide spectrum of work. I think tonight's going to be really a great topic on excellence. We strive for excellence both local and abroad. And I think sometimes how those definitions might vary, but we are still always striving for excellence no matter how the contract is written. And I think those agreed upon metrics that you set with your client and your agreed upon vision is what starts to pave the way or set the direction for some of that excellence. So I'm really looking forward to having these open, honest conversations with this group. And thank you for having me.
Nick, thank you so much. Glad that you're on our committee, and so pleased that you're representing architecture in this presentation this evening. The next presenter that will be introducing tonight is Vitas Virginius, who is representing operations manager with Hensel Phelps Construction and has a huge amount of experience in the field as well as in the office managing projects under construction. Vitas?
Thanks, Ernest. So like Ernest said, my name is Vitas Virginius. I'm a proud graduate of civil engineering graduate of the University of Southern California. When I graduated, I came straight to work for Hensel Phelps. I've been with Hensel Phelps. I've been in the industry for 30 years now. I've been with Hensel Phelps for over 28 years. Over the course of my career, I've had an opportunity to participate in many, many different types of projects, many different sizes, from jails to malls to airports to convention centers to hospitals, student housing, K-12. Probably like for most of you, what started out as a contentious design bid build world has morphed into maybe a better design build world along the lines of the pursuit of excellence. And I'm proud to say that unlike Larry, I've spent very little time in those courtrooms and chambers, I don't know, judges' chambers and mediation chambers and all that stuff. But I do appreciate what you do, Larry. So I'm looking forward to participating and sharing my, hopefully, a little bit of wisdom with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Vitas, very much. I appreciate that. And our next member that we'd like to introduce is Stephen Hall, VP of Professional Practice with AIAOC, It's at the state level and has just a huge body of experience with construction, architecture, and the pursuit of excellence. Stephen?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Before I go into my position at the AI California, I thought I'd give you a little background of what I've been doing. My career has wandered around for a long time, but almost all of it has been in construction administration. When I first started in October of 1979, one of my first projects was overseeing the construction of Richardson Naj Martin's Newport Beach office. So it's been a while. And the Northridge earthquake created an opportunity for me to move far up to the northern areas of Los Angeles, and I was the acting campus architect for the 1994 Northridge earthquake emergency repair project. We did $34 million worth of construction in 38 days. Going on from there, I've worked for firms that are as big as 4,500 people and as small as 17. I'm currently an associate vice president at Canon Design. It's a relatively new position because the last 15 and a half years, I've been director of construction administrations for Pfeiffer, doing things like Griffith Observatory, the $250 million 4 high-rise housing infill for UCLA, and all sorts of fun things, about almost $750 million worth of construction in the last 15 years. As I started out in the AIA as secretary at AIA Long Beach South Bay. I've been the president there twice, been on the board of directors for AIA California, and I'm now currently the 2021 vice president of professional practice. That's actually my second 2-year term on that position. So that position is involved with all aspects of the professional practice in architecture for the state of California. I'm co-chairman of the Architectural Professional Practice Advisory Board. Which we do is we listen to the various committees on the that are in AI California, and then recommend action to the executive board. So it's interesting in that aspect. I've actually went online, and I hate to admit that our project delivery tab is a little bit out to date. So that's something I need to work on before I end my year next year. So that's me in a nutshell.
Stephen, thank you very much. And I appreciate what you're doing at the state level, what you're doing for American Institute of Architects, and for the pursuit of excellence in our profession and in our industry of design and construction. Our next panelist is Samir Barbude, who's representing the position of Senior Project Manager with Morley Builders, Benchmark Contractors Incorporated. And he's the man who spends time with his boots on in the field and with his head in the computer, managing the construction process. So Samir, please express your background of experience and relationship with this the theme this evening.
Thank you, Ernest.
Are you?
Yeah, thank you, Ernest. Thanks for having me today. I'm a senior project manager with Morley Builders. I've been in the industry for 20 years now. Been with Morley for 16 years. Prior to that, worked for another general contractor for another 4 years. I've worked on various projects with Morley and the other general contractor, varying from educational, institutional, multifamily residential, student housing, parking structures, a wide variety, but most of my experience has been in multifamily residential and student housing. In fact, I've completed 5 student housing projects. I'm working on the 5th one now at the UC Riverside campus. It's a 416 unit student housing facility on campus. What I like about what I do is the uniqueness of every project and the challenges that come with them. It's being on the ground every day, seeing the project come together, and then being responsible for the execution and completion of the project within budget and schedule. It's my pleasure to be here today with all these great panelists and the audience. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to a great discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the reasons that we reached out to you was the experience that Morley Builders and Benchmark Contractors shared with Brian on the UCI campus in the design build development of housing, new housing for students on the campus. So thank you for accepting our invitation and participating this evening. Thank you. So our next panelist to be introduced is Dr. Sam Noor, engineer, and very much a proponent of excellence in project delivery, and one who's both in business and involved in professional performance of project delivery. So Sam, you're on mute.
I wasn't, thank you, sorry. Unmute, I sound better, I think. But first of all, thank you inviting me. I am now calculating just about in 2 years, half of my life, I was in academic world as a professor, dean, so on and so forth. At some point, I jumped camp, becoming a consulting engineer, but I've never left that teaching position. And I'm very active with USC School of Architecture on their not yet licensed program. I am active with the AIAPMO. I am active with IAEI. I am also active in different code bodies. In fact, we are publishing a very good sized publication for the IAPMO on the plumbing side. I'm also a fellow in the Plumbing Society. I'm also, every year, Jeff invites me to speak for AIA. In fact, on December 8th and 10th, I'll be doing my seminar. In this particular one will have a COVID impact onto it. The other issues, I do about 2 or 3 court cases, and that really evolves my thinking process towards the quote unquote excellence. So we do not have to talk to Jacobian Myers frequently. The other item is that I've, from the last, when the green environment or the green code came about, I became very, very active on the green and the lead group items. In fact, I am a lead AP and I have two lead projects at this time. And I do write quite a bit. I have a blog, at Sam's blog, which is at www.greenery.com. And I also write for about 8,900 on my LinkedIn followers. And most of the recent projects have been on COVID issues. But at the end of the day, really, we are all thriving, and with the great panelists that you have, we are all thriving to leave a name behind our stamp on those buildings, and we want to excel. And my theme primarily has been to excel. You need to be educated. You need to continuously take classes with AIA, with all these symposiums, and this is only a tool to get us to that point. But again, thank you for inviting me.
Sam, thank you very much, and we're honored to have you representing the engineering disciplines this evening. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce this evening Troy Gates, who's our next panelist to introduce the concepts of technology related to project delivery. He's been good enough to represent this evening USCAD and the software builders for many of the programs that we in architecture, construction, law, and every aspect of project delivery. So Troy, please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. Very excited to be on the panel. So yeah, Troy Gates. I am the Director of Technology for USCAD / Technology and Solutions Consultant to our customers. My background is in the 90s, I did a lot of civil engineering. It's what my education is in. Around 2000, I moved into BIM and started being a BIM technologist, and have helped multiple architecture, engineering, and owner firms to advance BIM implementation and all the technologies around that within their practices. USCAD is a design and construction technology company. Mostly we work as technology as a solution for our customers, not only from the technology side, but also from the services and implementation. And currently myself, I'm working with a large healthcare provider, a large global technology / data center company, and a national retail company to implement BIM cloud solutions to help them integrate with their designers, the contractors, and then and the trades to do the project delivery through this integrated process and deliver it to the owner at handover. So definitely get to see technology from start to end across all these projects. So again, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the discussions.
Troy, you just thank you very much. And you just used a term that we hope to resonate through the panel discussion this evening, and that's integration. So that's what I lean on USCAD for. The programs that we use provide so much capability for us with integration with other teams, with other design professionals, and for every step in the process of project delivery. So thank you for joining us this evening and participating in this panel discussion. The next part in our program then is offering seed questions to each of the panelists. And we wanted to follow in the same order, beginning with Brian Pratt. And the first question, or all the questions, are available to the audience through the links that we provided, or the AIA provided, and you can look at them, print them, and follow through. The first question for Brian is this: why should architects, consultants, contractors, and subcontractors collaborate early on in the process?
Thanks, Ernest. I'll start by saying, most of you, if not all of you, have encountered what I'm about to say, and that's that owners demand excellence, require excellence. Some would argue that owners, especially owners that haven't been through the process before, or are doing a building for the first time, or probably even the last time, often demand perfection. And while you're not obligated to provide perfection, that's kind of the expectation owners have. And as things get more competitive, as projects go faster, and we want more control of change orders and control of our budgets, we are starting to demand that the whole menu of architect, consultant, engineers, subcontractors, contractors start working together early on to iron out constructability issues, to head off change orders, to head off schedule impacts, and so on. Effectively reduce risk and allocate risk among the team, including the owner, to allocate in a way that is fair and equitable and placed to most beneficially manage the risk. So owners are demanding it. It's in the architect's best interest to collaborate with the whole team, because it results straight up in fewer redesigns, fewer redocumentation, drawing things 2 and 3 times, because you get the benefit of having input from people that can add to your design and add to your vision and add to your owner's vision and contribute in a way that helps you be more efficient with your time. So it's in the owner's interest, it's in the architect's interest, it's in the consultant's interest, contractor's interest, and so on. So I think it benefits everybody to collaborate early on.
Thank you. Great response to a leading question. And collaboration now is part of the theme, because collaboration and the pursuit of excellence really go hand in hand. So our next question is going to be sent to and fielded by Larry Treglia. And it's a perspective that I think is really important for us to share and focus on. And Larry has provided some slides and some images that support part of this, his response to this question. And the question is, how is the standard of care affected by advances in project delivery methods? And we really want to focus on how the advances in project delivery methods are facilitating the application of standard of care. So Larry, take it away.
Oh, thank you. Interesting topic, a lot to say. We'll jump in. I think the first thing I want to make sure that everybody heard is you heard it from the horse's mouth. No offense, Brian. But Brian stated what many people when you were negotiating contracts refuse to admit, but which they certainly hold that. Owners expect perfection and demand that the entire team work together to reduce risk and allocate risk in an appropriate fashion. And I think that is something we all need to be mindful of as we enter into this new age. So my task is to help us define the rules of the road so that we can first understand where we're at now and then evaluate how changes in project delivery methods impact the standard of care. So first, let's get some basics out of the way. In essence, the standard of care means that one conducts themselves in such a manner that when compared to what similarly situated professionals do, they are at least average, okay? That's the standard of care. So if we turn to, I'll quickly kind of run through these slides. First, lawyers make the laws. And lawyers stay in business by having laws be not clear and not being accessible to everybody else. And that's how we stay in business, okay? So when somebody asks me to define a law, I'm going to define it in such a way that leaves some ambiguity in your mind so that you need to call me. And that's just the way it works. So deal with it. The law is, this is slide 3. The law is a complex confusion of often contradictory and always evolving rules of conduct, which are typically applied to hotly disputed factual situations after the fact. So if somebody comes to me and says, I'm thinking of doing this, will that comply with the standard of care? My answer is going to be an absolute definite maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That's it. So if you're looking for legal guidance, that's it. That's what we got. Well, we do have those. We have things called elements of a cause of action. If someone's going to sue you for negligence, professional negligence, they have to prove 4 components, and that's on slide 4. They have to prove that you had a duty, you had undertaken a responsibility to do something, that you breached that duty, you failed to perform in a manner in which you promised or which the industry establishes that you should perform, that your failure to comply with your duty resulted in actual damages to your client or to an injured party. And then the 4th element is that the claimant has to prove damages that are recognized under the law. So pretty simple idea, and we learned this in first year of law school, first semester, you learn the elements of negligence, duty, breach, causation, and damages. So that makes some sense. You also have liability as an architect for the written promises that you make, the agreements that you make that might not be part of what the industry ordinarily does.
I'm on my conference.
But I'm sorry, I've got some feedback there. Are things that you agree to contractually. So for example, the industry standard might be that you would work through a certain design development phase within 3 months, but you might contractually agree to do that in 1 month. So you're making a warranty or a guarantee of performance within a certain time that might be different than what the industry standard is. And those claims are ones that we refer to as being breach of contract claims. They're claims where you've agreed to perform to a specific defined standard in your contract, and you are being accused of not conforming to that agreed to standard. And the courts will, again, enforce those promises without hesitation. If you promise to perform in a certain manner and you fail to perform in that manner, you have breached the contract and you are responsible for the damages that proximately result therefrom. So the good news is, if we look at these standards, what we know from case law is that our judicial system recognizes that one who provides professional services is not required to be perfect. They're not required to be, despite an owner's expectation perhaps of perfection, the law says those who provide professional services, and not just architects and engineers, but doctors and lawyers and accountants and so on and so forth, they're not held to a standard of perfection. They are held to a standard that their actions on this project were consistent with what those who practice in this area, who practice during this time period, would typically do. Again, we like to say it as, no less than a C would be the standard of care. That's the good news. The bad news is that who you are responsible to in the event that you've committed or allegedly committed a wrongful act, you've done something negligently, is expanding. Way back when, it used to be that you would only be responsible to those whom you had a contractual relationship with. And we referred to that as being, you would only be responsible for those people who you were in privity of contract with. You and I make a deal. If I break my portion of that, I'm responsible to you. I'm not responsible to some third person who might have also gotten hurt. And this is, again, not just for design professionals, but applies to accountants and lawyers. If a lawyer drafts a will, it's for the benefit of his client. If he does it wrongly, that somebody else doesn't receive what they expected to receive or should have received, that third person doesn't have a claim. This is all changing. So today we have to recognize that as architects, our responsibilities are not just to our clients, but they are getting broader than that. They are becoming, there's case law that supports an expansion of liability such that third persons who are going to, are the intended beneficiaries of your work. So for example, a homeowner who buys a house that you designed, now in California has the right to sue the architect directly. So we've got an expanding liability. On slide 8, I have, I put forward for you, because everybody asked for the definition, and the best definition of standard of care is what the juries will be instructed to at the conclusion of a trial. In an arbitration, the arbitrator would apply this same standard. And it is essentially that you're going to provide your services in a manner that's consistent with the industry.
So Larry, as we look at that background of experience and knowledge, we'd like to have you reference the advances in project delivery methods as they relate to that background. So it's the advances that we're really talking about this evening And I'd like to request that we bring that focus
Sure.
back to the topic on the technology and methods that we're following now.
Right. So I think and this is evolving. So the cases involving these integrated project delivery methods, cases involving BIM as the standard for design coordinations and so forth, these are cases that have started maybe 8 or 9 years ago and are kind of working their way through the system now. But here's the issues that I see. I see that that these methods tend to blur the lines from what has been established as a design, bid, build method. So if we look at the conventional method of construction where we've got design, it goes out to multiple contractors to bid, and then the construction takes place. We have now very established rules through the AIA integrated contracts, through jury instructions, through case law. We have very established rules that apply to those, such that it's pretty clear, some gray, but pretty clear as to who's responsible for what the design team is responsible for, what the contractor is responsible for, what a construction manager is responsible for. These integrated project delivery methods blur those lines. Who is responsible for what becomes much more difficult to calculate when everybody's working together. And that's a real problem. And if you look at, on slide 9, I have a list of the AIA BIM contracts that are available in their community. And one thing that strikes me from looking at those agreements is how much emphasis is placed on making sure that everybody agrees as to who's responsible for what and where those lines of demarcation are between a member of the design team or individual members of the design team and the general contractor.
Well, thank you. If you're complete with that, then Larry, are you complete with your slides?
As best as I can do in 3 minutes. I'll just go quickly through this last one. As we talk about BIM, and I think as Troy talks about this, he may touch on the concept of level of development. The level of development for BIM modeling is on slide 10. And then on slide 11, hopefully a slide we might get to later on, is a slide that I provide the panel as to use as a basis for what might go wrong.
Larry, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and I especially appreciate the reference to the advances in project delivery methods, and including your comment related to the blurring of the lines. And I think that Brian in his message will be able to express how that blurring of the lines brings forth, in many cases, a greater level of integrity in the process of project delivery. So our next question is going to be fielded by Nick from an architect's point of reference and perspective. And the question is, describe the architect's role as a generalist and specialist within the collaborative project delivery team. So again, it's that collaboration that brings about in many cases the opportunities for excellence in project delivery. So thank you, Nick.
Yeah, so let's maybe stem from kind of a little bit about Brian's talked about and Larry's talked about here. So you got perfection, right, on one side, and then you got responsibility on the other. And you know, Larry's saying it's a challenge, right? We've got all of a sudden these blurred lines, and that's a problem. And I actually see that as not necessarily a problem. I think we kind of disagree with that. We are establishing certain responsibilities, And I think that that's how we're starting to morph, right? And as we look forward, an architect was always seen as they know everything. They are the end all. And that is not the role. The role of the architect is, as I see it, is to be as much a generalist and in points have specialties along the way, right? We are a guide and a collaborator in this process. And I think what we're seeing in the process is it's changing, that it's not just about whose responsibility lies where, but how can we have a common responsibility to deliver projects in a collaborative effort. And I think it's going that way. When you look at some of the contract language that relates in the AIA forums and your agreements with your level of delivery and or level of development, right? You are setting early on who is doing what, so then that way you can get to that and know how is it even going to pass from hand to hand. I think that still leaves the architect where they really need to play the best role, and that's a collaborative leader, right? Asking key questions to individuals to be able to get the project to deliver excellence. And that's where you can, I think an architect can be the best facilitator along the way. I think it's very interesting to hear, like I said, you have perfection and responsibility kind of almost opposing, right? And that leaves the architect somewhat in the middle. And I think, I'll say it again, collaboration is so key in how we're going to deliver excellent projects. And that's not a new fact. That's been tried and true since the beginning.
Well, thank you, Nick. You're really pointing to the fact that the architect traditionally has been in advice, and the advances in project delivery methods are switching that role and that responsibility and that obligation from being in the vice of the only point of reference for the achievement of excellence. I'm going to shy away from the term perfection because that's not the theme this evening. But the architect now is relying on technology and the collaborative spirit.
I think Ernst, it's not the architects relying on a technology. It is they need, right? At one time we used to draw on rocks. At one time we drew in the sand, and then we got paper and then pens and pencil. It is merely more tools in your belt that you have to explore and use and utilize. And sometimes that, we can not forget that one of the best tools to utilize is communication, verbal communication, physical communication, honest communication, right? That's what gets the project across the line.
Nick, thank you very much. And we're going to rely on Brian too to help point out examples of where that communication breaks down the requirement to get into areas that don't include mitigation and moving the process forward in a team spirit. So the next question is going to be fielded by Vitas, and this is from the construction reference point and perspective. And the question is, how does the design build method of project delivery support the pursuit of excellence in design and construction? So Vitas, I know that you've got just a huge body of experience with design build, and I'm certain that you've had experience too with how this blurring of the lines brings us to the point of communication in the field and through the process of project delivery.
Vetus, you're muted.
You're muted, Vetus.
Vetus, you're on mute.
Did you see the hands moving? Is that how you knew I was talking? Yeah. So I got 3 minutes. I want to spice it up as much as I can to keep everybody entertained. Okay. So I got a couple things. It's amazing how perspective changes how we see things. Larry's comment. Standard of care says you don't have to be better than, no less than a C. I don't want to be a C. That has nothing to do with excellence. Standard of care says no better than average. I don't want to be average. It's not exciting to be average. It's boring. And I understand where Larry's coming from. I mean, everyone working together, that's a real problem. I actually think in order to be excellent, you have to work together and blur those lines. I would also say that in order for a job to be fun, exciting, and the best it can be, you have to strive for perfection. Now, I totally agree with Larry that we can't achieve it. And contracts that are written to trip us up, we do our best to shy away from. But I think perspective is last comment. Nick said architect knows everything. I got disagree. Contractor knows everything, right, Nick? But I mean,
couldn't
again,
agree more of you.
That's right. That's perspective, right? But I think the whole process, the theme of this discussion is striving for excellence. And to answer the question you asked is, I would say that if you do IPD or design build, if you do those right, okay, you have a process along the way to turn issues into opportunities and to be excellent along the way, okay? And so the process provides you an opportunity to do things different, something better, something good. Provides you an opportunity to be accountable, to listen, to learn, to break free of some of the old stereotypes. So that's why I like it. That's why we're drawn to it. And that's how I think we collaborate, communicate, as Nick said, and get the best out of our teams and get as close to excellent as we can be.
I'd like to pick up on something Vetus just said. I think accountability is huge. And a sophisticated owner, one that's been through many projects, will understand that they too have accountability. But a lot of owners that haven't been through the process before, many that have, want to push all that risk across the table and accept as little as they can. When in fact, the accountability part, if it is allocated correctly, and to Larry's points about standard of care and not taking on accountability that is a much higher bar, or I shouldn't say not taking on, the risk of taking on accountability that's a much higher bar, I think is really important here, because if there's accountability and shared risk, then figuring out where those blurred lines start to get a little more focus and a little more clarity, starts to help the projects along. If you have laser focus on the project and the benefit of the project, and you spread the accountability appropriately, then you're setting yourselves up, at least in a framework, for success. It never works out quite that way, but you're setting up a framework.
Let me jump in too, if I may. Vetus, I really appreciate your comments about perspective. So my perspective is pretty simple. I get involved, I negotiate contracts, and I redline them, and I feel pretty good about them. And if the project goes well, I don't get invited to the grand opening. I'm not there at the ribbon cutting. I'm not there. the next thing I typically hear is, I just got served. And so from my perspective, that's the path. We've got a contract, kumbaya, everybody's gonna get along, great, we've got a plan. And then I get either nothing or the lawsuit. And I can tell you, I've deposed probably 40 top-notch general contractors throughout the United States. And 2A1, when asked about complicated issues about construction and so forth, they say, I just do what the architect tells me to do. So
thank you for that perspective, Larry. And I'm remembering back many kind of conversations that I've had over the years with your partners. And it's always included the description of the phases of design and construction, including schematic design, design development, construction documents, documentation, construction, project delivery, and litigation. And the real purpose of this symposium this evening is to eliminate the final phase of litigation to the best of our capabilities as team. And that really comes out of several points, beginning with a contract, that the contract is supportive of those areas of accountability that are required, and through the process that we're in great support of, is that Brian has a term that's very productive, I think, and that's cohabitation. And that cohabitation really means that everybody's in the same room. And everybody's in the same room during the design and construction and delivery of the project. And in that same room, the lawyer in the past hasn't been invited as much as should be, but in a realistic framework, the lawyer should be in that room every day when those RFPs are coming forward, and the RFIs are coming forward, and the change orders are on the table, and mitigation in the moment is required, and facilitation of progress and forward collaboration of the team members is available. So, and that probably leads right into the message that we're looking to Stephen to provide in the answer to this question. Describe the impact of collaborative construction technology, law, and regulations on project delivery methods. So Stephen, take it away.
That's a big question. Been listening to everybody, and the word collaboration has come up quite a bit. And I've started about 15, 16 years ago, started using the term collaborative construction in terms of the idea, very similar to what we talk about in collaborative design, is to have a team of contractors, builders, owners, and everything working together during the construction process. A lot of times it's just, the RFIs, and no one really, starts to talk about it. The best way I think I can explain this is give two examples. One example is where it actually worked. And this was an interesting project. It was actually the typical design, bid, build project, and low bidder was building. And I was brought onto the project specifically because it was in problems. It had problems. It was behind schedule and over budget. Contractor had stopped talking, period. In the owner OIC meetings, he wouldn't say a thing. What I started to do was start talking to the people as a group and saying, look, we're in this together. We're trying to build a building. We need to get it back on, we need to keep it on the schedule. We know we can't possibly finish it on time. and we need to limit the amount of money that's being spent. You know, we need to keep it, you know, we need to stop the hemorrhaging. And it took a while for them to understand. I kept asking the contractor, what would you do? If, you know, if you got an RFI, says, I would like to hear what your ideas are. How do you want to take care of this? So eventually it did start working. It took about a month and a half, maybe 2 months before the contractor started talking again. And when the project was finished, there was no lawsuits. It was definitely over budget still, and was under, you know, and past the schedule, but it didn't increase. None of those increased from the time I started getting everybody to talk together. Conversely, I had a project recently where, for whatever reason, they didn't have a CM on the project. They had a project management firm. And their idea of getting work done was adversarial. In other words, they would not just simply say, you know, if they wouldn't take, it'll be the first of next week. They want to know what day it is, even what time it is that their answer would come. And it got to the point where the contractor, you know, started getting bit by these people, started having to point fingers because they had to defend themselves. And they started obviously pointing fingers to the design documents, the construction documents. And, you know, in spite of all the work that I've been doing, you know, trying to do to pull everybody together, this PM company was really doing everything to pull us apart. It got the owner, unfortunately, followed that process. I mean, arguing $5 on a $30,000 change order was absolutely ridiculous, but that's what the owner was doing. So obviously, I don't know what the final thing is going to happen on this project, but I expect litigation. There's no question. So I think that's what you need to look at, is just working together. I mean, there are certain expectations, and there's, you know, we have to, I think, trying to think, talking too fast for my brain. The idea that we need to, you know, fulfill expectations is a key issue. If the client expects something, we need to talk to them and find out what they expect and why. And I should point out that the last project, the one that went south, was actually a GMP project. So the contractor was involved in the project from schematic design on. So, you know, the way the project delivery works, I mean, I've done GMP, design build, you know, the typical design bid build, all the, you know, every possible things. And my idea, or not my concept, but the concept of collaborative construction works for every single one of those types of delivery processes. So you strive for excellence by working together as a team.
I'm going to cast those words in concrete. Stephen, thank you. And speaking of concrete, our next panelist that will be fielding questions will be Samir. And I think that I'm really looking forward to your field perspective on this question. What are the greatest challenges related to the pursuit of excellence in design and construction project delivery?
Sure. As a general contractor, obviously one of our biggest challenge is tighter budgets and schedules. The budgets are shrinking and the schedules are getting tighter and tighter. With those two constraints, it's even more critical for us as a general contractor and some of our specialty subcontractors, such as fire alarm or fire sprinkler design build contractors, to get involved early on as possible with the design team to come up with the best solution for the project. It's invaluable to have their input on the project early. We don't run into issues further along the line during construction. With tighter schedules, it gets even more critical that we get involved in the projects. Most of my projects I've been involved with have been design, bid, build, GMP projects. And I can't agree more. I mean, it's really beneficial for us to collaborate with the design team, have an open line of communications, suggestions, throwing out ideas, doing constructability reviews. It's invaluable for construction so that we mitigate any hurdles that can be anticipated during construction. It's obviously, we strive for excellence, but it's not always 100% worked out in the field, but the more we can get them resolved early on during the drawing revisions process, the better. The other one would be some of the disciplines such as civils or landscape or interior design are typically lagging behind the architectural or structural revisions. And in order to get the project started, we start with a GMAX set and then run into construction set and several other bulletins, and the other disciplines are still trying to catch up. And it's on us as a GC to make sure we maintain a good record set of drawings so that information can be passed on to the guys in the field so that they are building of the most latest and greatest current set of information. Nothing gets missed. That's one of our biggest challenges, but we try to stay on top of those. And again, the more bulletins we have, our challenge also is to price those bulletins, review them with the owner, get them approved. Also along the way, try to at least make provisions for those revisions while the pricing exercise is going on, and make sure it gets implemented eventually into the project. So those are the couple of challenges we face on every project. But I truly agree that collaboration and communication is a big key for success on any of our projects.
Samir, thank you very much for those comments and for that perspective on the key challenges. And Nick, I saw you nodding your head. I'd really welcome anything that you had to input on that, especially when Samir mentioned the coordination among the disciplines that are lagging. When it lands on his lap, everything may not be completely dry. It could still be wet.
No, and it could be wet. It absolutely, to say that it doesn't happen, it would be a misnomer. I mean, you deal with it every day that at times that you want things as fast as possible. It's just making sure everybody aware where everybody stands as things come in. But I do still think that you, as a team, you have to be responsible, or you have to make sure who's responsible on the team to know where each person's level stands if they're not all the same. And that's important. It's really important.
Yeah, when project delivery occurs and the plans and the models land on Samir's desk, we're always looking for excellence.
To pick up on what Samir said and what Nick and Vitas and Larry have all said, you know, I think if we're all in a room talking about the standard of care on a project, then something's probably gone wrong. We're probably in an area where we're debating a somewhat unsatisfactory performance by the team, and I don't lay that at say the architect's doorstep or a consultant's doorstep. I lay that at the owner's doorstep, at the contractor's doorstep. But if we're having that discussion, kind of to Vitas's point, we're certainly, well, I wouldn't say certainly, but we're not achieving excellence, I don't think. And so, you know, the question of a standard of care or elevated standards in contracts and commitments by, design teams, owners, builders, everybody that may not be or may rise above the standard of care. I think we are striving for excellence, and if we're using standard of care kind of, you know, as a contractual crutch, then, you know, something's probably gone awry.
Well,
I'd like to, can I pick up on something that Steve said that I think bears emphasis, if I may? I think we've kind of set up maybe a false dichotomy, you know, is it perfection versus standard of care and so forth. I think there's another component to it as well that I think Steve picked up on. And that's, I wrote it down this way: meeting a client's properly shaped expectations. I think that's pursuing excellence. It's if your client perceives that this project is going to result in perfection, and perfection's defined as on time, on budget, not a single day of delay, not a single change order, well, that's an unreasonable expectation. We know that. There's no amount of collaboration that's going to result in perfection if that's how it's defined. If we define excellence as being a project that is delivered within a certain milestone of its planned delivery date, and with no more than 5%, say, of design-related change orders, we've then established a level of performance which is much more consistent with what people working diligently together can produce. I think defining excellence through your communication with your client, advising your client, informing your client, working with your client to properly shape expectations for quality of work, quality of finishes, amount of change orders, those type of things would really advance the ball greatly. And I think somebody talked about early intervention. At 11 o'clock today, I was participating in a seminar, and the topic of the seminar was how best to arbitrate construction claims involving 300 or more change orders. Are you kidding me? I'm telling you, there ain't no way. I've done it. There's no way. You're in trial for 6 months because every change order has its own story. The fact that we have a national group putting on a seminar as to how to effectively arbitrate projects with 300 or more change orders tells you where the community is.
the communication is.
Yes.
So Larry, thank you for that input. That's excellent perspective, and I really appreciate your circling back to expectations and methods of bringing those to the table right at the very outset of the project. And that also leads us to the question that we were going to send to Sam, which has to do with does the project delivery methodology impact the pursuit of excellence in development of construction documentation and project management for life safety system? So it really has to do with what's coming from the engineers and from the disciplines to the project from the viewpoint of providing a level of excellence in that aspect of project delivery. So Sam, take it away.
First of all, just to let everybody know, both plumbing code and mechanical code have the word workman-like added this year, and that's an average skill and intelligence. So they have put the word average in the code body, and the irony is the word intelligence. That means that I can do an IQ test on the plumber or the mechanical or structural contractor before I let him have the job. So it's very, it's now actually in the body of the code. Before I start my segment, I really need to get some words together. Number one, the excellence becomes the ultimate goal. Can you get there with us, which we are not very perfect individuals? No, but that's a goal. At least we are reaching to that point, hopefully in a utopia format, which was very difficult to get, but hopefully we'll get there. The other item is that I really pray that excellence in design becomes a universal design, something that 5 years later says, oops, I made a mistake. That design becomes the same like a high-rise that I work in that was designed in 1958, which I was born, And since then, it works like a clock. The other issue is that, before I get to my list, is that everything has become so complex. The controls, the lighting, the safety, the adhesives, the materials, all that. How can one individual, quote unquote, an architect or an engineer, try to reach and overwhelm all those subjects and yet simply say, I am going there? With where a plumbing code used to be only very, very small, now is a giant booklet. The I'm a structural engineer too. So right now it's the volume 2, but it goes to an ASCII and goes to the AI, the concrete and all that. So by the time you look at a code book, you're looking at a very, very voluminous section. Now, can all of these be there by simply working 8 to 5? The answer is no. The word excellent has the word excel in it. That means you have to excel every day. That means education, experience, skill. And as we know, you cannot be a novice person and work at UCI and do a building at UCI. You have to have all that skill together. But going back to the project delivery for a life safety system, which really, as structural engineer, I see seismic part of that too. NFPA 101 is a complete booklet that has to deal with compartmentalization of the building, with the smoke, with all that. Now we got COVID added to that compartmentalization. HVAC system has cross-contamination, not COVID part of it. In terms of water, you're looking at what happened in Flint. You're looking at Legionella disease, Legionella, that we had a major outbreaks both back east as well as in Vegas area. The electrical system, egress path lighting, you have to now have this because otherwise you will get into other issues. The fire alarm, which is on its own, security on its own, material selection, right now part of COVID system, you have to have a very smooth system. So all of that becomes part of it. Color has become part of the egress lighting. If you design it with the wrong color, you won't get an egress path lighting proper enough. Everything has become extremely complex, and yet we are not becoming complex. All the individuals who are doing the project delivery, I always say everything is becoming high tech for very low tech individuals. So the other issue is that can one individual, can one architectural firm, one individual have all the amplitude and all the complexity of these and simply say, I'm doing this, I'm providing the design, I'm going that direction. The problem that becomes is that it's very complex. Everything is becoming very complex. At the same time, you really have to integrate everybody. Now, if you want to use the collaborative system, you may have to really integrate. Now, God bless BIM and BIM, the fact that it can actually integrate it in pictorial form. But as stated, everything is becoming super complex. You have to ensure that every individual that is part of that life safety system knows all the way from the designer all the way to the contractor. We had a situation that a 60 horsepower motor was not being able to be electronically changed, and the day of opening date was only 2 weeks later. And where this HVAC company had 60 trucks, you make the assumption that they have individuals that can do it. They did not have the individuals. So really all that simply says you have to have the right team that is complex enough for today's complex group and projects. And I can tell you that, as Johnny Carson used to say, his video always showed 12 o'clock because he could never put the time on his video. That's where we are right now. It's just very, very complex. And again, at the end of the day, we do not want to, I hate to say Larry now, I always use, we do not want to be part of Jacobian Myers calling you for these issues.
So thank you very much for those comments. And that's a perfect segue to our next presenter, Troy, and the process of development of software and tools that create greater levels of communication and capability for those contractors and subcontractors that are struggling to get the job done. So Troy, our question is, what do you consider the future of project delivery will be based on past and current state of BIM technology. And I'm trusting that you'll focus some of your comments towards one of the new and very valuable aspects of our industry, which is LOD. So take it away, Troy.
Yeah, so when BIM came out, it was very exciting for the industry, but it never, in the beginning, it didn't hit what people thought it could be. So pretty much in the beginning, companies and mostly design firms were using it as just an internal tool. But still, at the end of the day, they were still producing 2D documents. So it made them better at what they did as a design company, but it didn't create a better project delivery. Currently, we're much better. There's a lot more collaboration. There's a lot more integration between design, construction, the trades, even into ownership. But we're still not there. We're still delivering a lot of times models, but they're not models to be built from. And we're also still delivering 2D documents to build from. So project delivery still has a ways to go. So what is the future? Well, the future definitely is a model-based delivery of the project. And it has to be fully integrated and collaborative from all parties in order to have a model that is capable of a contractor being able to get the information out of it to build from. So that is definitely the goal of BIM and the goal, I think, of the industry. How far out we are, no idea. It's just such a big industry with a lot of input from a lot of companies that it's hard to get there. But we do see companies where the design and the builder are working together to eliminate 2D documents. And so you do have things like joint BIM execution plans, LOD, the level of development, that you have to use. They're very critical in order to deliver a model that you can build from. And that coordinated model using, the LOD gives you that standard of care that you're asking for. You can't have things that fabricators can't build from. They need that level of development, right? Or they're going to remodel it themselves, which is very common today. You have fabricators that take a design model, look at it, throw it out, and then rebuild it themselves. Well, in order to have a model delivery, you have to model at the level of development that downstream can use those. So the level of development really matters. And I think working with the trades and the design and the contractor together, you can build the model to that LOD level to build from. And then where do we go from there? Well, if you have a model-based delivery, you can use things like machine learning. It can learn about your models and the way the teams have put these models together to generate new ideas for the next projects you do. Take healthcare, for example. Not a lot of differences in the way buildings are put together because you always have one end goal. Well, through machine learning, it could be starting to look at all those models that you're delivering and building from and start coming up with the most optimal ways to build these healthcare facilities. In addition to that, the other goals and intangibles that come from that, obviously you'd be a lot more clash and issue free. You'll have models that can be fabricated from. That's, I think, the biggest time sink for a lot of companies is around the fabrication, but also having that 3D model on the construction site and being able to perform checklists and punch lists right off the 3D models. That really is the future of BIM.
Troy, can I ask you a question? This is Larry Treglia. And I showed this in our preview, but slide 11 is an excerpt of a BIM model. The mechanical subcontractor on that project was agreed to model in BIM, model to a level of development 400, and received a fee of $7,500 for that. And the result was what we see on that slide 11, which is that they actually, in a very complicated kitchen area within this community college facility, they opted to model it not where it exists in real life, but to model it in a basement that doesn't exist. And so there was absolutely no coordination between the mechanical contractors, BIM drawing, and any other element of work. Didn't include structural or fire sprinkler or anything else that had to be there. Kitchen exhaust hoods, grease interceptors, all of those things, which made this area very complicated. Instead, he frankly just modeled it, created his own space, modeled his own work in that. So what are we looking at from a fee perspective? You know, how much does it cost a mechanical subcontractor to do a BIM LOD 400 on a project, and is cost part of the problem why we're not getting good BIM product?
That's a really good question, Larry, and it allows me to ask a question that I had been jumping up and down trying to share with Troy, and that's expressing how BIM, cloud-based BIM, impacts excellence in team collaboration, and that really begins to answer the question that Larry's asking about LOD 400. Cost may or may not be relevant to this conversation, but certainly collaboration and communication is central to this question. So if you can respond to that, expressing how BIM impacts excellence, that'd be great.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, like all technologies, it's only as good as the people that use it, or in this case, the teams that use it, right? You know, the technology could do everything for us, but if you don't put in the effort or you don't use it correctly, you're not going to get the correct result. When it really comes to collaboration and coordination, COVID or work from home has really exposed the amount of effort that companies were putting in to collaborate before. Now they're having to do it all remote. The cloud is a scary topic for a lot of companies. They don't understand necessarily what it is or what it can do, but they also are afraid to have the data in other people's hands, right? That's probably a big concern across a lot of architects and engineers is, it's my data, I got to keep my IP to me. Well, the cloud as a platform, but really that collaboration and coordination, you have to share your IP because you're going to resolve issues like what you just explained. Being able to have people work together, not necessarily live, but as close to live as possible, you're going to pick up at your first, model review, hey, why is all the ME or why is all the mechanical in the basement when we don't have one? Instead of waiting for it to be delivered as a construction documentation. So that collaborative platform is really going to get people to work together, but you have to free up your reins of saying, this is my IP, I can't share with you. And we see that a lot. We really need to open up as an industry and say, you know what, we can have IP, but we can also share it underneath, a contract with other people, knowing that they're going to value that IP as ours, and that we're going to use this for the common goal of building that project for the owner. So hopefully that answers a little bit, but it really is, don't be afraid. For people that are listening, don't be afraid of the cloud. Try to think of it not as a technology. Think of it like Nick said, it's about coordination. It's about collaboration. The technology helps you to do that better, and it will resolve issues a lot of times before you even get to them, because they're going to come up front. You're going to see them right away, not when you're going out to bid or when you're into construction.
I'd like to pick up on something that both Troy and Larry kind of talked about, and Ron's touching on it a little bit in the chat. You're talking about the cloud, you're talking about BIM and Revit, and that's evolving, and smaller firms often have limited access to the technology and the cost of a BIM, a Revit seat, or the cloud or technology that supports it. And I sort of pointed to Larry too, because I think fee touches upon that also. A small unsophisticated MEP firm trying to do a BIM model for $7,500, and one thing, just to pause there for a second, I'm interested in how standard of care reflects on fee or not. But I think what we're talking about here is a technology that is pretty widely accessible and available to bigger firms and bigger organizations. Here we are at UCI asking for LOD 400, and really our capability is to use something much less on campus. So we ask for way more data than we can even use. So I just wonder how reflecting on smaller firms or first-time owners or a small MEP subcontractor or consultant engineer, how that plays out in developing a comprehensive and coordinated project set of documentation and onward to the contractor. So we have pretty big contractors here. We have pretty big consultant teams here. So I just want to expand the conversation to think about some of the smaller firms.
Troy, I think that's a real good point for you to respond to.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's a cost. It's a retooling cost. It's been going on for 20 years at least now, right? BIM's been around about 20 years. I think it's like most technologies with the bell curve. You have those companies that push the lead, then you have the as the early adopters, and then you have that middle frame, and then the laggards. And most of the time, the laggards, it's either a cost or the size of the company. We just don't have the time. We only have time to produce drawings or documentation, things like that. Unfortunately, I think companies just have to see it as we're going to invest in ourselves so that we can be better at what we do, and we're going to get those benefits at some point in the future. So the ROI is there. It's been proven by the industry. And I think those smaller companies, whether they do it themselves or they outsource to companies like myself, US CAD, we help companies all the time, big and small. If you can't do it, if you can give us the design, we can help you do it. And we can take that design where you're the expert and we can do the modeling. So things like that. But I don't think it's a will or if we get there. It has to be a when can you get there, because you're not reaping the benefits until you do. And you're going to miss out on projects that have owners like UCI that require those models. How can you, get a proposal in if you're only doing 2D?
So I want to just circle back to you, Brian, because that's an important point. And I wanted to circle back to this part of the conversation, where what impact can the contract at the very outset of the project, the RFP and the contract, have on accountability for excellence at the time of change orders and RFIs? And is moving back away from technology for a minute and getting back to communication right from the get-go and all the way through the process.
Yeah, and it's sort of easy for me to say, being a campus architect at a UC that has is known for onerous contracts. The UC system has indemnity clauses that are incredibly onerous, and yet with the power of the UC system is able to move ahead with contracts that are certainly place the advantage in the owner's lap. And I think it's incumbent on an owner to be fair, number one, as corny as it sounds, be fair and reasonable, accept risk, as I mentioned earlier, accept risk that is ours to accept, and work out, as Larry pointed out earlier, work out the definitions and how the team members are going to establish what the standard for that project is, and so figuring out the contracts and the framework for the agreements, general conditions, is hopefully a dialogue, but it rarely is. Most of the time it's an owner ramming a contract down a consultant's throat. And so then it comes down to how the owner administers that contract. And we can be onerous or we can be fair and reasonable. And if we resist lawyering up, no offense, Larry, if we resist lawyering up to solve a problem and avoid turning to the agreement to fight over whose responsibility is what, then we can work more fairly together and more reasonably together to solve a potential project problem or head off project problems before they even become apparent.
Brian, I hugely appreciate those comments. And I wish that we had set this symposium up for a 4-hour symposium, because everything that we're touching on here is opening up a broader and broader spectrum of questions and responses. And I've got one right on top of me here that I wanted to share with Larry, but I'm going to hold back because of time. We had promised the audience that they'd have an opportunity to participate in this symposium. And it looks like Stephen has something to say before we shift to that.
I'm actually putting on my AIA California hat on this.
All right.
I think a lot of people have heard of the large firm roundtables that they have all over the state, talking to the bigger firms. And one of the things that always bothers me, even though I do work with a fairly large firm now, is I actually had my own office at one time. And the highest percentage of members of the AIA, especially in California, are sole proprietorships or smaller firms. Now, they obviously don't do projects on UCI's campus, but they do a lot of projects. And one of the things that I'm hoping is going to happen in 2021 is a small firm roundtable, so that things like this can be discussed. We can bring Troy in and talk, about what the services are available for BIM that are not necessarily in-house and that type of stuff. So I hope that's going to be a future program that AIA California is able to do. We're looking at an interesting budget next year, but we'll see what we can do.
Stephen, thank you much for that input. And so I know that Sam has a fairly small firm, and he's got concerns with respect to the impact of the BIM world. So Sam, can you weigh in on that just a little bit, please?
Yes, main issue that you have, and I've put it on the chat, is that the fees do not have room for BIM. The irony is that right now I'm a consultant for a Google project, that the BIM is actually not done by the architects or the engineers, is done by the contractor for their own benefits. So right now, contractors are doing BIM just to do their analysis, their materialist, etc. Even as semi-larger firms do not do BIM. The other issue that I have, I'm very involved with quite a number of engineering societies. BIM really is lopsided more towards the architects. And then the engineers are really struggling, trying to get little components to make the BIM work in the architectural world. So really BIM is like a body that has a very giant head, smaller arms, smaller foot. So really BIM has to really work in that direction. Hopefully at some point, it's not that how much cost it is per seat. And again, the fees do not give room for any smaller firms to do BIM. It's great to do, and I was, because of my handwriting was so bad, I had to start CAD very, very early on, but BIM is just too expensive for the projects that we do. And we do quite a number of them, it's just the money is not there. But I saw Ron give a very good comment that can you put BIM cost onto your contract, then you would never get the job.
Thank you, Sam. We've got some great energy and perspectives represented on the panel, and we, in pursuit of excellence in this symposium, we do want the audience to have an opportunity to participate. So instead of me orchestrating and moderating the direction of next questions, Jeff, I'm going to ask you if you can read the chat for us. Jeff, are you there and available?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
We have quite a
Communicate.
I am going to scroll through these. If we don't get through all the questions, I'll save them, and maybe we can get the panelists to respond after this is done. Like, again, we can use this as long as we need. So let me see. Let me scroll back a little bit here.
So we have about 10 minutes or so to address this, maybe 15 minutes at that point.
All right, so here's the first question. Are we satisfied with current system of project progress tracking?
Who is that going to be directed towards? And I don't have it in front of me.
I don't know. It goes to all the panelists.
From my perspective, I'll chime in here. Project progress tracking that I see is all over the map. From contractor to contractor, architect to architect, design team to design team. You know, what ends up being effective for us, you know, so let me, maybe if I step back a second, you know, for example, we are not an owner that says you must use XYZ project management system. We want the contractor to be comfortable in the project management system and tracking system that they use, so they can't come back to us and say, gosh darn it, if I could have used my system and I didn't have to use your stupid system, everything would be fine. So we use their system, and we adapt to it. But progress tracking, I would say, is really contingent upon, as a tool of what the team needs, how effective it is for that given team on that given project. You know, some progress tracking methods are incredibly detailed, you know, that include, you know, every aspect of the information, ranging from who's responsible to how much it costs to what the schedule impact is to, you know, what sheets, drawing sheets it affects. And too much information there can be paralyzing. In my mind, the progress tracking is really about decision making and causing decisions to be made either by the project team or the owner or you know, an engineer. So, you know, it's a balance of the amount of information that is needed to enable the team to move forward and not be paralyzing. But from my perspective, you know, progress tracking systems are all over the map. So it's hard to say whether I would be satisfied with a given project project progress tracking method, given, you know, the wide variety that we see.
And sometimes those tracking methods actually influence the breakdown in communication instead of the inspiration for greater and better and more effective communication in the process. So Jeff, do you have the next question, or are there other?
Yes, I do. We've got quite a few here. So here's the next one.
Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
There may be other panelists who wanted to respond to that first question. Okay. Nobody's waving their arms, so go for it. Jeff?
Sorry. Oh, I thought I had unmuted myself there. Where was it?
Hey, Jeff, before you go on, could I ask a question while you're still looking at be on that particular topic?
Absolutely, Ron. That was actually yours I was asking, but you can ask anyone you want.
Well, maybe it's actually one I haven't typed yet, but with regard to the project tracking system, Brian, you mentioned that you allow the providers to use their own tracking systems and you adapt. I have worked for and managed projects where the owner demanded all of the team use the EPM system that they built, and they may be off the shelf or they may be adapted from something off the shelf, and that's done in order to ensure that down the line, so in case somebody like Larry is required, then we have everything available for all documented in one place. And so that's the other way of looking at that. And it's another extreme. And yes, on the ones I've been involved with, there have been a lot of complaints about it, that the providers have to adapt rather than the owner. Just a comment on that. I don't know if everybody else on the panel has that experience. I know that Nick does.
I think to kind of maybe add, or Brian, if I can take this one, having worked on a multitude of projects with a variety of project tracking, I want to step back to what you kind of said is, making sure that that the tracking is being used for key decision making, right? And not just sometimes the minutia of tracking every little single piece on the project. And that's sometimes I think what gets lost, right? There's some waste, whether that be in the BIM management part, whether that be in just sending emails back and forth in the software, whether that be like 6 steps to make one step actually happen, right? Like there's waste. And I think what's key is the software needs to continue to support a focus on streamlined communication, right? What are the key decisions that are important to the project? This kind of builds into, I know one of the things somebody else mentioned about having a on-time litigation, right? Having cohabitation with even the lawyers there all the time. Yeah, like that's getting to the point where we're recording every single thing of our lives. Every single thing. Is that adding value? I would ask. I'm not sure that it is.
Yeah, I think, Nick, I totally agree with you. I may be channeling Larry here a little bit, having been through mediation, never litigation, but mediation. I sure wished that we had more project records than we had. So I do think there's a balance there, of project records and record keeping that facilitates decision making. But also, the unfortunate reality is if you find yourself in mediation or litigation, you got to have your war chest too. And, so I think that's a real balance there. I think it's unfortunate that you have to think in some of those terms, but I think it's an unfortunate reality.
So Brian, I see Vitas bouncing on his chair over there. Vitas, do you have some input with respect to those issues that you'd like to share?
Unmute.
You're muted again, Vitas.
What was again the question, Ernest? I didn't quite catch it. You were figured it out.
Yeah, the question that Ron was posing was related to project tracking. And what we were discussing back and forth was, is it minutia, or is it important, or is it vital, or is it a breakdown in communication, or is it adding to the communication, or is it influencing the positive aspects of project delivery, or is it?
You're expanding it and expanding it. Yes. Okay, I got it, Ernest. Sorry. The key issue that I don't know. I mean, the project tracking, like Brian mentioned, seems to be all over the map, and I don't know if any of them really work as they advertise or are supposed to. I mean, Procore is pretty good, but it's not. That has its disadvantages. I'm kind of old school. I still use Excel, even though other people are using everything else. I need to track it for myself. So
I use the telephone.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes the telephone's a lot better than a lot of other things. If there's a problem going on, give a person a call instead of sending emails back and forth.
Yeah.
Ron, I think a lot of the stuff that you're saying in terms of minutia, we can get bogged down in that. Sometimes you need to look at the bigger picture and not necessarily talk about whether the nails are 4 inches on center or 6 inches on center on a particular shear wall. You know, the inspectors will hopefully catch things like that. So, I mean, I don't really know a good answer that solves everything, because everything is out there.
Well, I'll just chime in.
In the air, and then I'm going to put it back to.
Just quickly, from a lawyer's perspective, the reality is during the course of the project, good, competent general contractors, good, competent owners, good, competent construction managers don't know what the problem might be. And that something that might seem like a minor issue at the time can spiral. And then you get so-called experts involved who go through the project file with a fine-tooth comb, and they may have hit on some event that steered the critical path of the project from the planned path to a different path that related on it. And while I appreciate concern about the system getting bogged down, and my view is what happens in litigation when we're going into a forensic mode to figure out, you know, who lost.
Yeah.
This, more documentation is always better than less.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
that a bit.
Stephen
but,
and Song.
Yeah. But I think, I wasn't saying that I think what you need to be is clear and concise, not necessarily writing down everything, but trying to keep the statements simple. I mean, just simply put, we have there is an issue over here, and this is what it is, instead of going, trying to come in and come up with all the ideas to solve it at that time. It needs to be documented. You're right. I've gone through, I support lawyers going through documents and reading that type of stuff and trying to find discoveries and all sorts of stuff. And if there was so much minutia in there, it's difficult to find anything. If it's clear and concise, that makes sense.
Tom, do you have something to add to that comment?
Yes, sir. There's two things. Number one, I never forget, I was doing a court case some 20 years ago, and the gentleman was a very, very good voice, deep voice from South Africa. And he says, aren't you the engineer of the record, with that tone, and you are the architect of the record. That means that you must record everything that you have done. The example that you gave on the 4-inch versus 6-inch or 2-inch, the shear walls are based on the nailing patterns, whether that wall, how much pound per linear foot capacity it takes. So even that part, it could be a very, very good example for a further litigation. So personally, smallest component could be important for one team, not for the others. So even a small minutia for the engineer of the record or the architect of the record will be important, God forbid, in front of an attorney or a judge.
Thank you, Sam. As a moderator, I have to watch my watch for a minute and help the people who are only committed to a panel discussion that will end at 6:30. But I certainly want to invite the audience and the panelists to follow my closing remarks with opening remarks. And Jeff, I'm encouraging you to bring forward the questions from the audience for any of the panelists who are willing to stay. So the theme for our 2020 Project Delivery Symposium, Pursuit of Excellence in Design and Construction, has brought forward valuable insights and knowledge for the audience to ponder and discuss further with friends, business associates, and fellow professionals. This evening, we have considered the impact of current construction technology, law, and regulations on project delivery methods. We've discussed current commercial project delivery methodology and related impacts on the development of construction documentation, modeling, and construction project management. And we've explored concepts for management of project scope, design, and construction within current project delivery technology and methods. We honor the wisdom and experience conveyed by our panelists and sincerely thank our audience for their participation and interest in the content of this symposium. I've been so excited to have this today. I wish it could go on for more hours, but I just want to thank you, each one, panelists, audience, and administrators for the tremendous effort that's been extended and for the value that we've received. So thank you, each one. So back to you, Jeff.
Okay, and the fact that we still have over 50 participants and it's 6:30, I think they want to hear some more Q&A. So here's one to the entire panel. Many years ago, as-builts became record drawings. Nowadays, BIM takes the entire process to a much higher level, especially when sophisticated clients expect to use the final model in the CMMS. How perfect should the final model be? How should the client properly shape his or her expectation? And then I'm going to add to tee up Larry, should language be included about expectations in the contract?
Oh boy, thank you very much, Jeff. Who wants to start in on this one? I see Nick scratching his head. Is that a good a good sign?
I can kick it off. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, to go from bottom, I mean, I think you asked Jeff, should contract language be in there if it's going to be held up by the lawyer or by the owner? Absolutely, it should be in there. You have to set the precedents and the expectations early, especially when it comes to BIM. Now, how should the model be delivered? That should also be in the owner's contract with the contractor or whatever contract does exist with the builder. How perfect should the record built model, you want to call it, be? I mean, I think I would almost default to Brian with some of his expertise on an owner's perspective. I think owners right now know they want a BIM model. I'm not so sure they know what to do with it. And even very experienced owners are still battling, and you know, government agencies are battling with what do we do next? What type of staff do we need to have on board to actually make this appropriate? What are we going to do with it as it continues its life? Because I think it's been interesting is you said, oh yeah, we got to build this to exactly how we actually built it. Okay, well, why? What are we going to get out of it? What's the end result? What do we want from it? Or is it just minutia and work to do work? I think we need to be very clear about what we want to get from it and what it can do for us.
I think you're right, Nick. You know, big institution, UCI, and we are somewhat overwhelmed with data. Data that we ask for, data that we hold people accountable to provide, data that our buildings are generating. You know, the buildings themselves. You know, somebody touched earlier on the sophistication and the complexity of buildings. You know, the facilities maintenance people are having to become IT technicians over building maintenance.
Could not agree more.
So, you know, we are absolutely guilty of asking for way more data than we know how to use. And I think that's really common. You know, what I'd like to think is that what we should ask for is what the contractor needs to build a terrific project and what we need after the fact to maintain it. You know, our projects are supposed to be, you know, 50, 75-year buildings. And, you know, so with that comes a level of quality and a level of necessity to gather information about the as-builts, the ongoing maintenance and you know, functioning of the building. But I think that is, you know, that issue of asking for more data than you need is probably pervasive in our industry, arguably, you know, pervasive in much of the developed world, I would guess. But you know, it's certainly an issue for us.
I think it'd be good to touch on really quick, Brian, or to leverage from that is, and maybe I want to make sure that I'm very clear about this statement. I don't think that it's bad that you ask for more, because the buildings are going to have such a long life. We don't know what data we're going to need in the future. And I think having that door open for a flexibility is just one of those open conversations that needs to be had, because your facilities department might become your IT department in 5 years.
That's why we asked for it. That's right.
Well, can I interject? Troy, maybe you could speak to this. Are the CMMS drawings typically included in a LOD 500 definition from your experience?
Most of the owners that we work with are happy with 400. They don't necessarily need that 500 level information in the model. Usually it's going to be detached in a database. All that manufacturer information, all of that is usually going to be detached, and then they'll combine it in the CMMS. But we do have some owners, especially some of the federal government owners, that do want it all in the model because they want everything in the model. And there was actually a question in the chat of, BIM waste. That is a BIM waste when you ask for too much stuff that you'll never use, because then you're causing, even like we talked about the smaller companies, how is BIM, efficient for them? Well, if they're having to model stuff that will never get used, it's just a waste.
Troy, I'm a lot more practical in some ways, because I look at BIM for the greatest level of potential communication, interactive communication among the team members. And so again, I point to the spirit of collaboration and using that model primarily for that level of communication that's accessible, capable, and useful to project performance.
Yeah, when I talked about the future being, the model being the delivery, it's meant to be that collaborative model. When you're a contractor and you have to build off a model, you need that collaborative information in it in order for you to build off of, because you're going to be generating your own sheets for people from that. Instead of the architect or the engineer generating sheets of what they think you need, as a contractor, you would generate your own sheets off of the model when you need them, which, as an industry, we've gone from building, very large complex buildings with 15 sheets to now having 500 sheets to build a very simple building. We don't need all those sheets. That's the waste. We can get it by having that model and only generate it when we need it, or use the live model to build from. And we have the tools already to do that.
The only thing, if I could chime in, my thinking is that all these sheets are primarily for legal for legal protection. And I'll give you one example. California Green Code mandates that anything beyond 10,000 square feet shall be commissioned. I can tell you they get commissioned, and in the fluid world, nothing is perfect. Fluid world is plus or minus 10 to 15%. So if you set something at 15 GPM, it will not work at 15 GPM. You have to still adjust it. Really, you put the commissioning on it only gives more excuse for legal cases. That is only for protection. I believe all these sheets are continuously compiling and compiling, has become a legal sort of savior as opposed to a practical savior. And it takes time. Right now, small little projects, 17 sheets. That's a lot of branches of trees. Anyway, just to have to bring it in, that it's unfortunate.
I agree. I mean, how many general details do people slap into projects that they don't even look at anymore, right? Even like ADA details. Projects will have, 5 sheets of ADA details, exactly the same no matter what project they do. Why do we need that in there? Contractors know how to build towards ADA.
Jeff,
until they're
enough and go back to the next questions, or where are we in the process?
Nice, Larry. I like that comment.
There's been a lot of answers to questions in the chat line, which is good. However, I don't see one to this one. So I think this will be open to everyone. How is the industry reacting to generative design technology?
I can start since it's technology. For people that don't know what generative design technology is, it's using computers to take a single design with attributes around it and run a bunch of iterations around it to try to find the best or a few of the best designs based off of your criteria. So a simple example would be take an apartment complex and you have a fixed site and you have a certain set of requirements. It can sit there and iterate through the placement of all the different units so that you can look at the different ways that they're laid out. It's really starting to get ground right now in the industry from what I've seen. It's been big in some of the bigger firms. I know Gensler's been doing it for a while, but it's, as an industry, is becoming at the point right now where it's as groundbreaking for people as BIM was when it first came out, in the way that it's going to change their designs.
Stephen, do you have some input on that one? Stephen, do you have some thoughts about iterative design? Or Nick is probably a good one to respond as well.
Yeah, I can kind of add a little bit to this. And Troy, you're absolutely right. You know, we have been, I mean, like a lot of larger firms, we have invested in a lot of generative design. And that's not just saying like, oh, we're going to go out and we, you know, create programs. That's not what we're doing. What we are doing is we're investing in people that are able to create generative processes and approach a project process a little different. And what we're looking for, right, is how to streamline different design elements to allow or facilitate multiple options for owners faster, right? How do you analyze a building in downtown LA so that way you can look at a parcel, multiple parcels, and figure out how should it stack up? How does it mass out that much faster for the owner to make a decision, right? What we're trying to get to is faster decision making for all parties. And that's where we see the impact having on generative design. And it's not just big projects. We do a lot of commercial interior projects and we use a lot of generative design for it. Whether that be for an actual design element, whether that be for desk layout, whether that be for interior space planning. I mean, it is not just big architectural projects. This is going to impact the way you approach a project. And I would venture a guess that a lot of the contractors see it pretty regularly.
It's good you mentioned that. A new one that just came out that had a big discussion around it recently was just generative design for social distancing and being able to make sure that, you know, people aren't sitting so close together or, you know, in a restaurant that tables are spaced correctly, but using those rule sets to build the design with different iterations that you can, like you said, show to the potential owner.
And I think it's not, right, we're not looking to put things in place, and it should never be as a, you know, people think, oh, AI, right? Oh, it's going to take over and it's just going to eliminate my job or whatever. No, these are giving you options, right? It still has to work within rules that you've created, right? That you still have to make decisions on. It's just presenting those decisions in a different manner, faster.
Brian, are you using iterative design methodology at all on the campus?
No, I would say, you know, I would draw parallels to some parametric stuff that we're doing, often actually in programming, where, you know, we establish a set of rules that we then plug information into, and out of it comes generative information. For example, you know, in a healthcare project, perhaps nurse to patient ratios, for example, and how that impacts space.
Mm-hmm.
It also helps with real-time cost analysis. But, you know, short of what our design teams are doing, I'm not aware of real application of generative design in our projects just yet.
Thank you. Jeff, back to you.
All right, and actually that was a good one to have Brian respond to, because this question is actually directed to Brian. UCI implemented design build 25 years ago, plus or minus, as a direct result of the amount of litigation resulting from design build bid projects. Your process hasn't changed much during that time. Clearly it works very well for the campus. What negative feedback, if any, do you get from your clients, the users, and what negative feedback from other members of the community who may not have figured out yet the keys to your process? And then also, what changes have you made over that time span?
Yeah, so the criticisms we get are usually stemming from not enough involvement from the users after award of the design or through a design competition, that they somehow have to take a leap of faith. We, as the owner, have to take a bit of a leap of faith that we're, out of our design competitions, going to get a really terrific design like the one behind me. We do get, we also get feedback or criticism that somehow, you're compromising on design, which I actually, vigorously defend. I don't think we compromise on design really at all. Our buildings are really, terrific results of a team effort that includes the users. Some of the things that we've changed, we no longer use bridging documents. We use a robust program that is primarily performance-based rather than prescription-based, so that it unlocks the ability of the design build teams to generate and provide us their great ideas about how they might achieve a better result through a different means than we ever thought of. I mean, we're not the smartest people at the table. We bring in, teams that are smarter than us and can contribute to stuff that we never even thought of. We did a transmission electron microscope facility that we basically stated the criteria of the most sensitive microscope and said, hey teams, tell us how to achieve it. I certainly don't know how to achieve the kinds of criteria that this transmission electron microscope required. And there were people that told us we were crazy for doing it design build. And now here we are, several years later, and they're breaking records for resolution of their transmission electron microscope. They're looking at the vibration of bonds between atoms, for gosh sakes. There were folks that said we couldn't do it. It was not achieved. The criteria was not achievable. But rather than saying, go do this, go do a 12-inch slab with, base isolation and neoprene gaskets and all that, we said, achieve this vibration criteria. You go figure out how to do it. By the way, this was in a existing building as well, a functioning research building. So imagine, elevators running, generating electromagnetic interference. And we don't say fix the elevator, we say achieve this electromagnetic interference criteria. That's a big change over time. We used to do bridging documents.
Thank you, Brian. Ernest, I am getting some responses of folks that their time is running out.
Yeah.
So we may want to cut this off. Again, I will go ahead and save the chat line, and it can be made available. Just reach out to me, jgill@aiaoc.org. And so maybe there could be some closing comments from the panelists. If there's anything else that you want to throw out there to the 40+ people that are still here.
I'd be really pleased if we just went right around the room and we could just stay in the same order. Brian, you can lead off with some closing comments, and then we'd really appreciate that.
Sure. Well, first, I want to thank all the panelists for the discussion and causing me to think through things in ways that I often don't get the perspective that you offered. So thanks for that. You know, in terms of the future of UCI, I'd just say that, you know, we are exploring delivery methods. You know, our Irvine Medical Campus, the new hospital project, we're delivering progressive design build, which is, you know, different for us and a new way for the UC system in large part to deliver projects in a more iterative fashion. So we're learning there, you know, and then just to circle back on the panelists, you know, every time I do one of these, I learn a lot, and I appreciate that. And you know, while we do a lot of projects and are considered a pretty sophisticated owner in terms of project delivery, we still have a lot to learn. And so I appreciate the opportunity to get to learn from everybody.
Brian, I really want to thank you for those comments, because they really reflect my feelings exactly on the value that's being generated in this room and in this symposium this evening. So thank you. Larry, you're next on the agenda here, and we'd give you a maximum 3 minutes to give us some wrap-up comments.
Well, I'll echo Brian's comments. It was a really enjoyable experience to be a part of this, and thank you, Ernest, for the invitation. I appreciate lively debates and the passion of the panel. I want to touch on one thing that came up in the questions, though, where somebody asked whether or not we could, how can we address standard of care, an elevated standard of care in our contracts, came up. And I just want to kind of touch on that, because it's something that we should be kind of concerned about. And while we view this in a relationship of owner, architect, contractor, construction managers, that team, there's another party to all this, and that's the insurers. And that we need to be mindful in these discussions in contracting and changing contracting, especially elevating our standard of care or making promises of a specific performance that can be interpreted as being a warranty. We need to be very mindful as architects about that, because your insurance frankly doesn't cover it. So your warranties or agreeing contractually to an elevated standard of care is something that can be very problematic for you, and might result in, as an owner who pushes for a higher standard of care in their contract, is actually pushing their architect towards the possibility of lacking insurance to respond to that claim. And so I think we need to be very mindful of that, we're cautious before we put our foot into the water of increasing standard of care contractually.
Larry, thank you for those valuable and thoughtful response. And that was a perspective that's very critical in these changing times, and press towards a future of greater levels of communication. So we're going to try to keep the insurers in this circle of communication as well. So the next one is Nick. Can you wrap it up for us?
Yeah. So just to wrap up kind of what Larry's saying. One, Larry, my insurance is very much intact, and we are definitely covered. So, you know, we're always thinking of them. But no, I think I do want to echo a little bit that we have to be always aware of the standard of care, and I think it's right. It's of like, right. You're always you're being compared at all times, and I think all of us want to be greater, right? And all of us are always striving for something more. And I think that's just human nature. And I know here at Gensler, we're always going to strive for designing better and better and better. And, you know, maybe along the way, it naturally gets elevated. But I agree with what you're saying, Larry. Yeah, we got to operate how we got to operate right now. But I do think we can live in the gray area that we're all used to of we got to collaborate to realize amazing projects.
Well, thank you, Nick. And everybody in this room is here to influence the increase in professional performance. So thank you. And the next one that we wanted to hear from is Vitas from the construction perspective.
Great. Well, I just learned how to turn that mute button off for the first time, so I'm happy about that.
Well
Well, thank you
done.
guys for the opportunity to participate. I want to leave you with one quick note. As I mentioned in my discussion topic or my answer, every day, every issue brings a new opportunity to strive for excellence. I'm with you on the standard of care. I'm not saying change it or increase it, but it doesn't mean we can't strive to be good. So I would encourage you all to do that and make a difference in the pursuit of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vitas. And Stephen, I'm really looking forward to your closing comments.
Well, I was going to do something fun because you guys, it was brought up about how big our packages are in terms of construction. I've got to tell you a little story from Griffith Observatory. The original intent was they were going to remove the copper dome, material off the dome of the planetarium, put new waterproofing in, and then put the copper back. As they started pulling off the copper, it would break at the seams because it's been that way since the 30s. So the idea was, let's build it, get the drawings, see what they built before, and we'll follow their details. The drawings for Griffith Observatory's planetarium dome shows a nice dome drawn up and two words, copper dome. And that is it. That's when we have lost the craftsmen that we used to have. And sometimes we produce too much drawings that are not necessary. So just leave it at that.
Stephen, I really appreciate those comments and that perspective, because that's the world I came from. And this new world in BIM is fast and furious. So thank you. Next comment that we're looking for is from Samir. Can you wrap it up for us?
Sure. So I think from a general contractor's perspective, excellence can be achieved. I know perfection is not realistic, but you can, every project, from project to project, you can definitely build up on your pursuit to excellence. Trying to not make the same mistakes again, have a lessons learned from every project and try to implement those lessons learned on the next project. I mean, that's how we try to better ourselves. And I think the key is communicating, setting real expectations, communicating those expectations to all the team members so that everyone's aware of the ultimate goal of the project and work towards that same goal. So I believe excellence is achievable. I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be a part of the group discussion here with these esteemed panelists here. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Samir, thank you very much for that closing comment. I'd like to cast in concrete those words. The key is communication. Next, then we have Sam. Can you draw forward some closing comments, please?
I'm going to primarily address some words. Number one, if we cumulatively add all the negative experience of all of this panel, we can create a book of errors. That book of errors could be used to ensure that we have the excellence by not doing the errors. Number two, again, at the end of the day, every year I collect some 150 hours of CEUs for my 33 states that I'm licensed in. And I really find out at the end of the year how much I don't know, because everything is getting more complex. And the more I learn, the more I find out what I don't know. The other issue is again, complexity on materials, equipment, et cetera, by going to conventions, et cetera. You realize that it's getting much more, it's not a simple system anymore. You have to know that and pray that the architect actually understands that is a complex system. You need all the clearances, et cetera. Hopefully you're not getting a battle of square feet or square inches or cubic inches with the architect. Please don't forget the word workmanlike has been added. The other item is that globally, the entire southern United States reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Are we ready for those climate change designs? Do we have adhesives that can last 120 degrees? Those are brand new systems that's coming up. The other last item I'm going to let you know is that please do not hire Murphy, because his laws will apply and create headache. So we do not want to have Murphy's Law happening on your back doorstep. I thank Ernest and your team. It was great. I am on page number 4 with all the keywords that you all have spoken. Thank you. Stay tuned, everyone.
Sam, you're terrific. Thanks so much for your participation and integration in this team effort today. So we're going to put the influence now on Troy to wrap it up for us.
Yeah. First, thank you again for inviting me. You know, I'm not part of the AIA, but we definitely like to support the AIA and everything that we can do to help. I'll just leave that, you know, like I mentioned, technology is only as good as the people that use it. You know, use BIM, use the cloud, use everything just to make your projects better. But just make sure that you hold all the team members accountable so that technology is being used the right way and it's not being used in a way that's going to have adverse effects. And I definitely take the invitation to join a small business roundtable. Would be happy to you know, be the technology voice on that too. So again, thank you for the invite, and this was very, very fun for me.
Thank you, Troy. Stephen, last comments.
One more from me?
Sure, one last word from the state.
From the state. Well, there are resources on both the national and the AIA California website for a lot of these things. And I would just suggest going browsing. There's a lot of drop-down menus. It's sometimes hard to find. That's something that we're looking at in terms of cleaning it up. But that would be my closing thing, that, you know, the AIA California is here to serve the members through the local chapters. We are not necessarily, you know, so talk to Jeff. Jeff will get the information to us and we to the executive committee, and he's running for VP of AIAC, or what is it, Jeff? Case. So you have good representation at Orange County.
Stephen, thank you very much for that perspective. I know that both Larry and I spent some time on the AIA website, becoming more and more current with what's available from a documentation standpoint on integrated project delivery. So again, thank each one of you so much for your willingness to participate on this panel. This has been a real highlight of the year 2020 for me, beginning with the symposium at the national level and completing now with this symposium at the local and Orange County level. So thank you each and all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet. Here with my, oh yeah, okay, I'm off mute. I'm just saving the chat line now. I'm going to stop the recording. There we go.